Okay, so today we're going to work on a subdivision plan using Civil 3D Parcels as outlined in the agenda. And I first want to get started here with some discussion on how this needs to be set up, because parcels in Civil 3D are different than Land Desktop. In Land Desktop, parcels were never really viewed on the screen. They were sort of a data vessel in the background that, maybe it made parcels from the polylines, arcs and line work that you had, and you could do a map check or possibly legal descriptions, but you didn't really display that line work. The line work you had on your screen is much like what I have here in this drawing. These are just lines, arcs, and polylines. So they were AutoCAD objects. Well, now in Civil 3D, parcels are a Civil 3D object, which is a little tricky to work with, and we're going to go through some of these tricks of the trade here today to figure out how to work those. One of the things that you first have to look at with parcels is how you set things up. So in the screen in front of you, I have an existing lot. So this is the existing lot. And on that existing lot, I have a little tract here that was split off. So let's talk about some concept here. This is how it was surveyed. Imagine this to being a farm and this being a little tract down here that they split off the farmer's lot. This being a little tract that they split off the farmer's lot, and this overall thing being the farm. A lot of people get goofed up with the right-of-way, and there are some decisions you need to make early on. And what I see happening with parcels a lot is that some of these decisions is we don't know. As an engineering firm, I think we have less people that know how to appropriately deal with parcels and need to talk to survey up front. With Land Desktop, we sort of avoided that to the end game, but now with parcels and the setup, you need to address those questions up front. One of those questions that you're first going to address up front is how is this right-of-way working with the parcel? In this example down here, I have this right-of-way line, this north right-of-way line here, and I have my parcel going into the right-of-way line. Well, that's a lot of deeds are like that, and they have what this would be is called this area here for the entire tract would be the gross area, and then if you take the gross area of the tract and subtract what's in the right-of-way, that would be the net. Well, in an existing conditions plan, typically if it's whatever shows on the deed. So if the existing lot goes out into the center of the road like this shows, that's how you need to plot it. And this right-of-way line, you would not, this right-of-way line on the north here, you would not have that a part of the parcel, because that, if you would add that to the parcel, that would split this apart into different tracts. So you don't want to do that. Simply, you draw what I have here on the screen for your existing parcels, that you have a parcel that goes out around, it's a big square, goes into the right-of-way, and then this north right-of-way line is just a simple polyline that goes right across the top, okay? So that's the first set of parcels that you would need to generate, and typically survey is doing that in the survey EX file. So us designers, we don't really need to worry about that. That's a survey thing, and we covered this in more detail back in the survey training when we first got started here. So let me open up another file here. This next file is what the designer would use, where he would actually create a new file, just like I have a new paintbrush file here. You can see I have a new paint image here, and I would trace over the existing conditions parcels, in my proposed base file. So I would trace over this. And I would trace over this in the survey file. And then I would come back in my design file and I would draw in this design line work, splitting this into additional parcels along the roadway here. Now it's important that you do this in a separate file. First of all, you don't want to be changing surveys, existing conditions parcels. You want to make proposed parcels. And the big difference here is you're not used to this in Land Desktop. In Land Desktop, you would have just XREF'd in the survey base file and just drew the lines that I have here in magenta and or red. Where in Civil 3D, you actually have to create the existing parcels again or bring those into your design drawing and then add the subdivision line work. So this would be your subdivision set of parcels. And you notice here we're Zing this track together. So essentially in this design, I'm going to be erasing this lot line here. And this would be the final. And that's what the final product would look like. Well, that final product, if you wanted to, say you're going to have two sets of plans, and you have a subdivision plan that shows the whole breakup, and then a land development plan that shows the final after the subdivision is taken care of. That is now a third set of parcels or a third drawing that you need to have that in. Similarly to how I have my third bump image here that shows the final product with that line erased. So there's really three drawings you need to have three sets of parcels if you need all three sets. If you need to show existing parcels on the existing conditions plan, those need to be in the existing conditions file. If you are generating a subdivision plan that breaks all the areas down to divide up the land, that set of parcels that breaks everything down should be in your design file. So if you're in transportation, be your T job number file, land development L job number. And then if you need a final set that shows, after the subdivision has been recorded, maybe you're going to come back in with land development and you need a set of parcels that reflects, the recording and the subdivision has already taken place, you would need a third drawing that has the final set in there. And that's something that is new to everybody here at HRG using Parcels. So there's more thought to put into these things, but you do get more out of it. So hopefully that makes some semblance of sense. As you can see here, to do those three sets, I had the existing parcels as my image here. Then I have my subdivision set of parcels, and then I have my final set of parcels. And those are three separate images in Paint, and same thing would happen for drawings. You'd have three separate DWG files. All right, so how do we do this? Really, with Parcels, it's pretty straightforward except for the, so Chris has his hand up, but I don't see any questions. Chris, if you're asking a question, I can't hear you. I think it's unmuted. Yeah. Oh, hands down. Okay. So how are we going to do that? Well, let me go through the ins and the outs of these parcels. I would say the concept of parcels is straightforward, but there's a lot of little gotchas that you have to be aware of to use them successfully. Should all be aware, used to this drawing. This is the drawing we used in boot camp in fourth quarter of 2008, so I'm going to use this and create parcels out of this. A simplest way to go ahead and just create parcels right from square one, if you already have something drawn in from maybe a sketch or whatnot and it's really all figured out, is to just go to your Civil 3D pull down, go to Parcels, and go to Create Parcels from Object. So these are really the two parcel creation commands you're going to use. One is by layout, one is by object. When it says to use by object, it just converts a bunch of things on the screen into parcel segments, and once they form an enclosed area, that makes a parcel. By layout, there's some layout tools like slide, side, angle, rule, and that's really what I'm going to show here in the next couple of minutes. Let me see, Chris had a question. So you can't put the final subdivision in the same drawing. You can, Chris. Chris's question was, can you have the parcels for the subdivision parcels and the final in the same drawing? Yes, you can, but they have to be on two different sites, and we'll talk about that in a second here. And also the line work, even though they're two different sites, by default, Civil 3D is going to put them on this same parcel and parcel segment layers. So you can manage that and make sure they go onto two different sites when you're creating the segments, and then also make sure that you switch the Civil 3D object layers. You know, if you're working on subdivision stuff, you have to switch the object layers so they go on your subdivision, and if you're working on your final, they have to go on that. And that's fine, and it's not that confusing, really, if you know what's going on. A cleaner way that I was trying to present here is that if you have three different drawings, it's pretty clean. You know, you extra up the existing, or the EX file for existing parcels, your L file for your subdivision parcels, and maybe a third file for your final parcels, and depending what drawing or plan sheet, you know what you're going to get. So we'll talk about some of the sites here and also the parcel segments. So hopefully that helps out somewhat in that question. So getting back to this, I'm going to go to parcels. I'm going to create parcels from object. And I'm just going to window this entire drawing. But I'm going to not include my right-of-way here because in this project, for my example, this right-of-way is just on the screen for visual effect. We're not going to dedicate this area to the township. That's just going to remain fee simple, or fee simple, part of the ownership of this larger tract. And that happens in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, when the surveyors come through, they don't, if they're not messing around over here, they don't want to start taking claim to dedicating right-of-way if they don't need to. It's sort of one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, if the township requires you to dedicate it, then you're going to have to go ahead and change that. I'm going to add these parcels to a site. Now, out of the Civil 3D template, there's 3 sites. The first one is grading master, and that site has all our feature lines and grading objects in it. The second site is for our subdivision parcels, or our parcels proposed, and then the third is our survey. So the surveyors, our surveyors here at HRG are really using this survey site. For our proposed parcels for subdivision, I'm going to use this parcels PROP. And really just have those in there. They're just a blank shell. And always remember, when we're talking about these sites, think of sites as just a grouping. So I have to put these parcels into a box. I have 3 boxes. Since I'm working with parcels, I want those to interact with each other, just parcels, you know, themselves. I don't want my parcels to interact with my feature lines, and I don't want my parcels to interact with my survey data. I'm going to put those in my parcels box. So just think of it as a box of stuff that's going to interact together. Now select that and simply accept my defaults here. These are going to be HRG property proposed. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, and what you'll see on the screen here is a slight change in my line work. Using the template, the most recent version, or actually a couple months old now, you'll actually see these little black dots show up in the center of where the parcel is created. And you'll also notice on this drawing, my right-of-way is now green. So why did it do that? Well, another big concept that we have to realize is that when you're dealing with parcels, the parcel is not the line work. So I'm going to have a closed line work here. And I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to make that lines instead of polylines. And I'm going to go ahead and make a parcel object just to convey this point. I'm going to select these lines, and I'm going to add those to my parcel proposed. Same thing, hit OK. And the parcel, like I said here, is this center object. This is such an important concept. I've probably talked about this a bunch of times before, but it's so important. The parcel is this, is the area. Okay? The parcel is not the segment lines. The lines that I added to this site, these are called parcel segments. And you can see all this by simply selecting one and going into your properties dialog, and you can see parcel segments. If I grab this center dot here, that represents my parcel. So if I click that center dot, you can see that that is the parcel. Now that center dot, if I break apart my parcel segments, you'll see the center dot disappears. Well, I no longer have a parcel. Parcels must be closed. Well, how do you define a parcel? A parcel is defined by an area that is enclosed by parcel segments, these being parcel segments. So as soon as I close this again, and I don't even have to tie to endpoints, I just have to make a closed area, you'll see my little red dot show up again, being the parcel. Okay? That's so fundamentally important that I just wanted to cover that one more time. So everywhere I have an enclosed area, I have a parcel dot. In an old template, you'll probably used to see that if you didn't get the little red dot, you probably had a marker or a piece of text there. So if I right-click on any of the parcels, little red dots, and I go to the hit Parcel Properties and go to the Composition tab, I can hit this area selection label style, and I can show you, I can have that dot, instead of it being a dot, I can have that being the, a piece of text. Well, in doing that, I don't really recommend having your parcel be represented by a piece of text. What I will always have is how it starts off with the template is that Composition tab is always set to No Display, which will just give you a little dot for the parcel. Because what happens is that area label that you have, you might want to move that around, and that sort of is the parcel, and it just gets a little complicated with text and everything. So a simpler way is just to have this little red dot represent the parcel, and we can label that with annotation commands, which I'll show here in a little bit. So creating parcels with by object is pretty straightforward. You saw me do that. You just draw some stuff up, create parcel by object, make sure it all goes to the same site, and if it informs closed areas, it will create a parcel in that closed area. Okay. Well, let's go through some of the layout tools. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this line work on the right-hand on the side of this cul-de-sac here. I'm just going to go through and add some parcels over here. Let me digress for a second. I do want to cover this whole right-of-way line being green. Well, why is that green like that? Well, if you can remember from boot camp, the determination of what layer these lines are, it depends on what parcels are side by side. Since this common one parcel segment is common to this parcel over here and this internal right-of-way, which is also a parcel, you can see if I grab that dot, the computer needs us to tell it which layer this line should be on. It has this area next to this area, so how does it know? Well, if I click on this parcel, right-click and hit Parcel Properties, I can go to Information, and I can see the style it's set to is HRG Property Proposed. Okay, that makes sense. And you can see if you click on that, you can see it puts it on our 20 PL layers. Okay. If I do the same for my right-of-way, hit Parcel Properties, I can see that that's also set to HRG Property Proposed. Well, that's not correct. I want to set that to HRG Right-of-Way Proposed. And then you can see with that, if you hit this style editor, it's going to put the segment lines on my 20 RW. So hit OK again, and you can see that they now turned red the entire length of that right-of-way line. Well, how did it know that right-of-way is more important or trumps proposed property? Well, the way it knows that is if you go into your prospector. Remember, this is a site we're dealing with this HRG or this parcel proposed site. Come down, if I right-click on the parcels group there and hit Properties, you can see as I add styles or select parcels and add different styles to these parcels, they will show up in this display order dialog. Well, since I have the HRG right-of-way above property proposed, that means the right-of-way area is going to trump the proposed property area. We're all talking about areas. And that right-of-way, the common lines in between them are going to inherit the right-of-way layers, not the proposed property. If I would switch this the other way and move proposed property to the top, it's going to go back to being green again. because every piece of this right-of-way is a side of a parcel area that is set to proposed property. So every single segment will do that. Hopefully that makes some sense. If you get confused about that, give me a call. This parcel stuff is one of those topics that is just a confusing to understand. Once you understand it, the workings of it are pretty simple. So let's get back to our layout tools. Usually a subdivision plan's not all set out for you. You have to actually design it. So I'm going to use some of the parcel layout tools to do that for us. So I'm going to go hit my Civil 3D pull down, go to Parcels, go to Parcels by Layout, and you get this toolbar. And when you first get it, it looks something like that. Make sure you hit the double chevron down arrow, and there's some things you need to fill out. One is your minimum default lot acreage. So my minimum lot size for this project are 0.25 acres. It is really important to set this stuff up front before using any of these layout tools. My minimum lot width from our ordinance is 70 feet. Also very important. Both of these are really important to set. And these are your minimum acreage or your default, what you're shooting for. Usually you're shooting for minimum, so you can really pack the houses in. And also your minimum square footage or minimum frontage on your lot. This down here is automatic mode, on or off. What this is going to do is it's going to let us choose. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to divide this up, and it's going to look at 0.25 square or acres, and it's going to look at 70 feet along this right-of-way line. Do I want it to show me each lot and I can click for it to create it, or do I want it to just do it automatically right off the bat? Well, I want it to show me. I want to choose this. If I had a huge project, maybe my first swath, I'd just let it do it automatically. And then you could keep this as yes, and you would just pick that parcel and it would slide all the way through it. You'll see this in a second. Also, you're always going to have a remainder. It's not going to evenly break up to 0.25 feet or 25 acres every lot. So what's it going to do with it? Is it going to create a parcel from the remainder, put the remainder in the last parcel, so the last one will probably be a little larger of a parcel, or redistribute the remainder? A very common thing is to just have that last parcel a little bit larger, so we're going to keep that. This is also a very important defaults to set up here is this auto enable snapping. What this is saying is, what is my increment of area that I want to be able to look at here? So I'm going to set that to 0.1 acres. So when I click down through these commands, it's going to show me either 0.25 acres, or it's going to show me 0.35 acres, 0.45 acres. As you can see that, it's only going to show me intervals of a tenth difference. If I wanted that a little bit less, in this case, I could do, then 0.05 acres, then I could get 0.3, 0.35, 0.4, 0.45 as I go down through. It will show me the different options of where I can place these lines. And then, of course, to use this, you have to have that set to true for enable snapping. As this command bar goes across here, you start from the left to the right. Here is the create parcel. So here's sort of the defaults for, as it makes these parcels, what's, what site they're going to be on, what style they're going to inherit. Everything looks good there to me. You can go ahead and just create, instead of, maybe I'm using all these layout tools and then I want to just simply draw a line. Well, instead of getting out of this command, notice I'm in a command here, and drawing the line and then creating a parcel from an object, I can just draw the line right here. I got another question here. Why do, I think you meant some parcels not have a red dot? If you have a older template, your parcels might not have a red dot. That's something I recently added about a month ago, maybe a month and a half. If you, or if you're talking, right, Denise, are you talking about in this drawing? Like up here, why this doesn't have a red dot? And if that's the question here, which I'm assuming it might be, that's because if you look here, this line, if I zoom in, on one of these sides. This line doesn't exactly, it's on that side, so it's down here. This line does not exactly touch. I can't zoom in far enough. I'd have to exit the command. But this is actually all one parcel because this, this is just how I brought it across from the current project we have, so it's a little not connected. And that's why. So hopefully that answers that question. And I'll fix that up here in a little bit. That's a little later in the video. Okay, so without further ado, here's draw line work. So I can just draw a line if I wanted to. Here I can draw a fixed curve or a three-point curve. Here I can draw some tangents. So this is almost like a polyline. Here you just get one line segment. So I can click that and just show you, I guess. Just click here and click here. And that's going to now divide this. Now you can see there's two red dots. One's here, one's here. If I do this draw tangent, tangent with no curve, then I'll get, I can continue from there and go ahead and draw a couple line segments, and then it's going to split it up further. So this is draw line, essentially draw polyline. And then here's the calculation layout tools. Put everybody's hand down. So there's three, you look at this and you think, oh, geez, look how many there are. Only look for where they say create. So you have a slide angle create, slide direction create, and a swing line create, and then this freeform. These are just the editors in between them to edit if they're already created in this method. The more you can use these commands to create your parcels, the better, because they're intelligent commands, and you'll see that here in just a second. So the first one I'm going to do is my slide angle create. I'm going to click that, and you can see down the command prompt here, pick a point within the parcel to be subdivided. All right, well, that's this parcel here. I'm going to pick a point. Then it says select start point on frontage. Well, this is one of the little gotchas. Parcels do not like, when you define the frontage and it goes around a curve here. This is sort of a double frontage lot. Okay, so frontage is not going to be our issue. You're going to our 70-foot frontage is not going to be a problem. It's really just the lot area. So instead of picking here and tracing around all the way around this right-of-way here, the better thing to do that will actually work for you is to actually just start at the first curve there. So you can see I need to define my frontage in a way that it's a one-sided frontage. Okay? And that's a little bit of a limitation of the software. So you just got to, that's just how it works. So I guess deal with it. And, then maybe that will get better in the future. So I'm going to pick the start point there on my curve, and you can see a little white jig there is what they call it, to come around. Sometimes you'll start going, and it might start going around the wrong way. When you get started, you sort of have to lead it so it starts the right direction, and then come over here to where the end is going to be, and then snap that. So that defines the frontage. Specifying the angle at frontage. Well, typically lots are 90 degrees off the right-of-way line, as you can see how this project was done. So I'm just going to type 90. And then it's going to say specify area. Now, if I would have had this automatic mode turned on, this would have just created the parcels. But since I had the automatic mode turned off, and I have my enable auto snap set to yes and 0.05, now you can see it's showing me with some tooltips here what my lot frontage is going to be along this right-of-way line. And as I get larger here, it actually shows you my area. So as I pull that out, you can see it's 0.45 acres, 0.5 acres it would be here, and my frontage, and so on and so forth. So I can actually come in, got to give that thing a second to update, and it will only allow me to go as small as my 0.25 acres. So you can see I can't go any less than that because that was my minimum. So that looks good. I'm just going to click that. I've noticed a little gotcha here is that sometimes you click and it doesn't take it. You do a left click. Just do a right click. And if you do the right click, it accepts it and puts it in. Again, sometimes the left click works. Seems always, You actually have to right-click for that to accept that 0.25 acres or whatever you have input there. It's asking me again for the specified angle at frontage, so I'm going to type 90. And then again, I'm here at my acreage. If I can either right-click or I can just type in. You can see down here. Maybe I want this parcel to be 0.4 acres, so I can just type in 0.4. And it's going to place that parcel at 0.4 acres. Angle at frontage again, and now you can see I'm coming around. And this one, if you look at my tooltip there, you'll see it says 0.3501. You say, well, why doesn't it let you go less than that? You know, why can't you get to that 0.25? Well, if you look on the tooltip as well, see the frontage equals 70. Well, it won't let me go less because my frontage exactly equals 70. That's the smallest that lot can be to get my minimum frontage. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that as well. And so on and so forth, and you can come around. So that's how you can get those lots sort of more interactive. When you're out of the command or done, you can just hit escape, and that will take you back to this toolbar. Just hit escape once. And for now, I'm just going to hit exit so I can show you what you get when you use one of these tools. Well, since I use this parcel by layout tool, you can see when I click on the parcel segment line, it's a little different. I actually have a grip that looks a little different there. It's like a double arrow grip. Well, when you create parcels by object, you know, if I use a polyline or a line like these were, this segment is defined by an endpoint and an endpoint and a direction. That's what a polyline is defined by. Just in AutoCAD, if you look up the definition of a polyline in the coder's code book, it's 2 endpoints and a direction. That's how a polyline is defined. A line is defined in the help as 2 endpoints and a midpoint. So these segments that were created by the parcel layout tools are defined a little differently in the code, and they're actually defined coming off of this at an angle with a square footage and an area. So what I can do with this now is it gives me a little bit better editing tools. I can actually grab this line and say I wanted to increase his frontage by 20 feet. You know, I'd have to measure across here maybe in the future after a submission or two and just get a line that's 20 feet longer. You're going to draw a 20-foot arc. And then I can just drag this line over and snap it, and it will automatically extend out to this back parcel line, and both parcels on either side will update automatically. So that's what that's a little bit of enhanced feature if you do use the parcels by layout, and that's really what's going to enable you to edit things faster. If you draw everything with lines, arcs, polylines, and just create parcel from object, you really lose all that. So whichever you choose. All right, so that's the one command. Let's look at the slide side angle. Let's erase these. So now I'm back to one parcel again. Parcels by layout comes back up. All my defaults are still there. I'm going to go down to this slide direction create. It's going to ask me to make sure my defaults are acceptable. Hit OK there. Pick a point within the parcel. Pick the starting point of the frontage, same deal. Come around the end point. This one, specify direction at start point. So it's essentially the same thing, except if I wanted to come off at a slight angle, I could actually type in the bearing angle or azimuth angle or pick it from the screen. Say I wanted these to be at this angle. Then as I go through here, I can find these parcels by that angle for each segment. It's, like I said, it's essentially the same thing because I could have just figured out this angle off the right-of-way line and did it that way. But I think what you get different here is, notice here at the end of the cul-de-sac, notice how it doesn't go radial. That's really the difference. At my cul-de-sac, it's going to keep that same bearing or azimuth angle or whatever you pick on the screen. It's not going to stay 90 degrees or whatever kind of angle you have from the right-of-way. So that's the difference. Like I said, pretty straightforward once you know how these things work. So just make 2 there, erase those. Let's go to the next layout tool, create parcels by layout again. And I think these commands were also in Land Desktop. I'm not sure. I've never used them, but I believe they were. The next one here is the swing line create. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that. Make sure my defaults are acceptable. Hit OK. Pick a point within the parcel to be subdivided. We'll do that. Select a starting point on the frontage. Same frontage. And swing line create is made that it is going to go and allow me to, how do I explain this? It is going to figure out the minimum 70-foot frontage along here. And I know that's a little goofy here on this corner lot, but you'd use it in a situation where maybe, this lot I would pick here, right? And then it's going to go another 70 foot. So maybe I want that to tie right to the endpoint. This is the existing property, and I already have a marker there, so I'm going to snap to that and hit enter. And it's just going to keep going over by the 70 feet to get your minimum frontage, and then you can tell it where the back of the parcel line is going to be, not the front. So you're really not coming off the front. You're coming off the back of the property for this, and maybe you want to have a line tie right to that end. Just hit enter, and you can see as I go through here, each parcel, I can define it by the back, and it's just going to come over 70 feet, 70 feet, 70 feet for the frontage. If I hit escape, some of the editing features of that is that it's always going to hold that front frontage. And there it didn't seem to actually. And I can swing it around by this back line. So it is what it is. The editing of there is seems a little goofy to me, but take it for what you will. It seems like I can actually get it less than the 70 if I keep bringing it in. So there might be some, I'm sure there's some uses for that. All right, I'll bring this around here a little bit. And the last editing tool, create parcels by layout, is hit this freeform create. So this one I really like. This one to me is probably one of the best. I just hit that freeform create, set my defaults here, and as I go around the parcels, it will actually come off perpendicular to any given parcel line, so I can create a parcel segment. So you can see that little tracer line. I can come over here and say I want to split this into 2 or whatnot. I pick the point. I can type in if I want to follow a certain bearing azimuth, so maybe I want it to go to this side, so on and so forth. Maybe I'm coming off of here, and I'm going to pick a point there, and then say I want it to be perpendicular, so I'd put 90 degrees, and it will come off 90 degrees. What's great about this freeform create is the way the tools are editable. So now this line is defined by azimuth, so if I slide that around, it's going to hold that same azimuth or bearing. This line was defined to come off perpendicular, so it's going to always stay perpendicular. I think to me, that's the best tool in the toolbox for creating parcels. Let me look here. I got another question. How would you deal with lots that have to, say, 25 feet perpendicular lot lines rather than going off a different direction? How would you deal with lots that have to, say, a 25-foot perpendicular lot line? I think Chris is asking about how would you deal with lots that are like this, where they come off. Maybe they come off like that and then go sort of like this. It's the engineer's or surveyor's cheat method, that's requirement of the ordinance to come off perpendicular to the right-of-way. So we come off, maybe 10 feet or whatever, and then we go in any direction we want, kind of deal. And how would I deal with that? I would draw it like I did, and just come up and hit create parcels from object, and just pick it. And you don't get amazing automatic behavior, where you can slide this and it automatically adjusts this angle. You don't get any of that. If you want to edit this, you sort of have to do it manually. So that's how I would handle that. So hopefully that addressed that question. Some things you might have to come back with and just not use the layout tools. You know, those layout tools are going to be made to go the entire way back to the back of the next parcel segment they see, essentially. If you need to come a certain distance and then break it at another angle, you just have to draw it in. And you can create those while still in the layout commands. You know, I could do it this way as well, where in the layout toolbar here, going to draw a line, so I'm going to go center, go to here, and then go from here, hit the line again, go from here, I can't pick, escape, just a little backwards, but you know, you can use the same, and then use my trim command here to trim this out. You can see how unwell that worked. So yeah, apparently that's not the way to do it. Just draw on a polyline and create an object. Any other questions? Let's see any up so far. My major bust there. Okay. So let's move into labeling these, because really, you know, after you create some parcels, the next trick is getting these things labeled. And there's a bunch of snafus there that you have to watch out for. But as long as you do, you're in good shape. So to have these parcels be created, you can see there's no dot there before I exit this file. And if I just bring those to close, you can see there was a gap here. As soon as I filled that gap, this parcel created. Same thing, there's probably a problem with either this line or this line. And boom. So as you can see, parcels do help you in that you'll know that this line exactly comes out and touches here, because if it doesn't, it's all going to be one big parcel in between these two lots. So that will help you. You can see there's a problem there as well. Out here, well, this one's because these don't extend to here, so on and so forth. In this project, they actually did dedicate the right-of-way, it seems. At least, yeah, I would think they had to, or they had some weird shape where this land over here would actually extend across, but these lots didn't go out to the right-of-way. So there's some things like that you do have to think through now with parcels, and it's good. It's a good thing. All right, to label these. I would never, ever label these parcels in the drawing. Always label them through the XREF. So let's do that. I'm going to hit create a new drawing here from our template. Go ahead and hit open, brand new drawing. And I'm just simply going to save this. And I'm going to XREF in my parcel base file. Okay, so the dots. Why do we need the dots? Well, the dots are on color 10, so they won't plot. So don't worry about the plotting of the dots. The dots are there because the first one we want to label is parcel areas. So I'm going to go to annotation, or you can go to general, add label. This is a toolbar not many people have up, or a menu, but this has all the different annotation stuff. You can always go to general, add label, has everything, same bar. Go down to parcels, go down to area, and since this is residential, I'm going to label this with HRG residential parcel standard. Hit add. I can do a window polygon, WP, and turn off my ortho, and just go around all these dots. Once I go around all the dots, I hit enter, and I get a label. What's nice in this method is that I can put that, it's just a normal Civil 3D label. Can be in any drawing, and I can move that anywhere I want. I can move it out here and leader it in, so on and so forth. Okay. You might ask, you know, how do I renumber these parcel segments now? Well, the parcels actually reside in the old drawing. So let me switch back here. I want to get this to say lot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. How do I do that? Just go up to Parcels, go to Edit, Rename, Renumber Parcels. So Parcels and Edit, and then Rename, Renumber Parcels. I'm going to start at number 1, increment by 1, just hit OK. If I had a polyline drawn on the screen already, I could use that, but I don't, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick a line in the direction I want it to rename, getting through all the parcels, which are the areas, not the segments. Hit Enter. Hit Enter again. And you don't see anything in this drawing, right? But if I hit Save, and I go back to my other drawing, get my XREF update dialog, and you can see all the parcel numbers renumber themselves going down through here. Okay? Let's add some bearings and distances to this. So adding bearings and distances, that's the parcel segments we're going to be labeling. So I'm going to go to type here, which is going to be single segment or multiple. I can go to multiple segment and use, what do I want to use here? This is bearing end distance, so the bearing and distance are on the same line. Bearing over distance is the bearings over the distance, so on and so forth. Let's talk about some of this stuff here. Let's use bearing and distance. And then for curve, I'm going to use HRG, radius, length, bearing, and distance. That's what we typically show. Hit Add, and then I can just pick the dot. And it's asking me, do I want to go clockwise or counterclockwise? I want to go clockwise. Hit Enter. Labels it. Okay? A lot of times people will get situations that they don't know what to deal with, how to deal with it. One of those is this case, where I want it to put the bearing and distance on this line, but why can't I get this distance? You can see they overlap here. I want this distance to be a little closer. Well, how do I do that? Well, in that case, you can't use this bearing and distance style because that's sort of defined by the end. You can change the style, but then it would change all of them. What you can do that's easier is just right-click on the label, hit Edit Label Style, change this to bearing only. Here it is. Bearing only proposed. Hit OK. So that just shows the bearing. Well, now that is just the bearing of the line, I can slide it. Then maybe I want to go back in here and I need the distance yet, so I'll come down to distance only proposed. Hit Add, pick that line, and where to go? Oh, sorry. If you're picking one line segment, you have to change this back to single segment. That's my bad. Go down to distance only, hit Add, pick this one segment, and there's your distance. Flip this back over, and then I can drag this and bring it a little closer. So yeah, there's going to be some time spent doing that. It's no different than Land Desktop. You spend a lot of time moving this text around. At least with Civil 3D, you can right-click on these labels, and if I want it to read the other direction, I can hit Reverse Label by a right-click. And if I want it to be on the inside, I can hit Flip Label. What's nice about Civil 3D is as long as I edit everything, so if I come back into my main drawing, I think that was this line here, and I slide that over to here, and I hit Save, and I'd come back over to my plan sheet drawing and hit OK. Now watch this area, and this bearing line, and this distance. They all update automatically. So the key here is to edit things. So let's talk about that a little bit. Since we are running out of time here, I'm going to really talk about the editing. I think is the next most important thing. There's some things I want to cover with charts and whatnot, and I'll cover those at one of the CAD user group meetings or the engineers and designers meetings, because I think the labeling is where people get fouled up. Okay, this curve here in this side radius. A common thing, this is, I think, is at 26.5 is the radius here, and I want to label that up. So I want to put tags on it, so I can sort of cover two birds with one stone here. I'm going to use HRG tags proposed for my line and HRG tags proposed for my curve. Hit Add. Go ahead and select, oops, clicking too much here, parcels, segments, okay, got it. Go ahead and pick this, and pick this. Now, you notice some things. You know, the line work, sort of, the lines drew this way, but the curve is on the other side. Well, why did it do that? You can flip this, and that brings it there, and you can reverse it, but I can't get it to, like I want the C to be here and then the 1 to be here. Well, why is it doing that? Well, this arc was drawn in this direction, and I need it to, and that's why it's reading that direction. Let me make my line and curve tables real quick. So to add those, and then we'll talk about how to fix that. Let's go into my parcels pull down here. Go to tables. I'm going to add my line table. So you basically just click add line table. I'm going to go down here to the tag in which I want to label everything with. So remember I used this style, HRD tag proposed, HRD tag proposed. I check that. It's going to use all of those. There's my line table. Same thing for my curve. Curve table, or I could pick individual tags by clicking down here. So if I didn't want to get them all, let me put this over here. So when I hit reverse on this curve label, watch the chord bearing and distance. See how my chord bearing changes? So that's what the reverse is doing for me. But I still want this C to be the other direction. So how do I do that? Well, I need to go back into the file where this line resides, and I actually need to flip the direction of that line. So with Parcels, all your editing tools are up here under Parcels, Edit Parcels, and right here is the reverse command. I hit reverse, I pick that, now you can see it drew it, you know, going in the clockwise direction. Hit enter, save, of course, go back, update, and you'll see that C flip around. Flip to the other side, so I can just hit flip, brings it onto the inside. Okay? And then, of course, you just got to check your chord bearing to make sure it's going in the right direction. Same thing here. I want to flip this to the inside. Okay, let's talk about editing this. As with everything else in Civil 3D, it is not draw and replace. It is draw and edit, which I think makes sense with pipes, right? You put your pipes down in inlets, and then if you need to move the inlet, you don't draw a new inlet pipe and then erase the old one. You move the inlet, and it dynamically updates. Well, parcels are the same way, except, I don't know, it's just in our heads we think, oh, if I want to change this radius to 30 feet, I just do, you know, I don't know, a new radius here, like I could do tangent, tangent radius with a circle, tangent, tangent, enter 30, and then I could trim this out. And I could trim this out, delete this one, and add this one. That will work. But if you do that, you really need to make sure you do a couple things. First is you need to make sure that you add this radius to the site first. If you don't, this parcel will dissolve. And let me see if I can go through it here. The undos could get me, but I'm so close to the end here, it doesn't matter. And this concept is really important. So I drew this circle in here. And you just can't use the fillet commands. You know, I can't just use fillet and hit radius and type 30 and pick this and this. It doesn't. These are not polylines. They're parcel segments. It doesn't work like that. I don't think. I wish it did. It doesn't. That's what we have to deal with. So I can draw a new radius in here. I can go in and I can hit create parcel from object, grab this new radius, and I can add that as a parcel segment, and then it will make a little parcel in here, and then keep this parcel. And that will work. I think what people will tend to do, though, is they'll go ahead and do this. And let me just draw this up here real quick. Area. All right, see how that's lot 26? Let me go back. If I erase this, if I have this arc, which is 26 feet, and I erase that, that parcel goes away. We'll say I already submitted. Then I come in and I'm like, okay, tangent, tangent, radius. And then I have my circle here. Okay, and then I'm going to take this line work, of course, and snap it back. I mean, there's 50 ways to skin a cat here on this. But this would be the wrong method, so just keep that in mind as I'm doing this. And then I'm going to add this parcel segment to my site, and then that lot shows up again. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to come back to my drawing, and you'll think, oh my gosh, everything's going to update. Civil 3D is the greatest thing ever. And I hit OK, and my curve disappears. It edits my curve table, so that's missing, and then my parcel segment disappears as well. So I go ahead and I re-add it, and now that's no longer lot 26. You say, well, this thing is junk. Well, it's because we didn't edit. We replaced. First of all, this parcel, we deleted the line between the right-of-way parcel and this one. So this parcel disappeared, right? Because it wasn't enclosed anymore, so it was a part of the right-of-way for some time in between. And we deleted this arc out originally, so there was no parcel. We deleted it. Then we came back, and this curve was labeled and everything, but we deleted that curve, and we put a new curve there. Well, of course, Civil 3D can't just magically know what it's supposed to label. The correct way to do that, if I come back here, and let me see if the undos will get me. All right. The correct way to do that, let me undo back here as well. Okay. Might need to label this just because undo is not magic. Okay. So now I'm back. The correct way to do this is to edit. So I'm going to follow the same sort of steps, but I need to edit this curve. So I'm going to do circle, tangent, tangent, radius, tangent, tangent. Maybe I'll make it just for effect 40 feet, a little bit farther this time. Then I need to grab these ends, and there's two ways really to do this. The grabbing of the ends is probably not the best way, actually. I really want to trim this out, so radius, array, and trim this out. Okay, and I'm going to add this new, I can't really do that. I need to grab this arc and drag it back to the sort of my tracer arc. Okay, all the time keeping the line work. Let me keep that like that. Keeping this parcel closed. Okay, grab that, edit that arc, and then once I'm done with that, I need to grab the segments and drag those back, grab those back, and then I can delete this tracer line work or my construction line work. I can hit save and go over to my drawing where everything's labeled. I can hit update, and you can see everything maintains and stays updated. Now, since I did some undos, that curve was pulled out of that chart. I can simply add that back to the chart. That was because of the undo business. Right click on the chart, hit add, take the tag, hit OK, just add it. We're really out of time here. I'd love to go. There's a lot more about not a lot more, but there's more about parcels. We'll cover those at a engineers and designers work group meeting. We do have to get going. But hopefully you can see where parcels get you on most of this stuff is you have to edit the line work that's there. And in the way you edit it, you have to make sure that your parcel does not dissolve interior. And that's just how it is. So for better or for worse, I know it's totally a different mind change for how I'm used to editing stuff, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad. And you save a lot of time because your whole subdivision plan, if you take the time to edit it properly, you don't have to mess with your text. It's just updates. So you save that half an hour right there. So if it takes you 15 minutes longer to edit it, you're still a net of 15 minutes plus. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully this helped out. I know we went long. Apologize for that. And be on the lookout for the engineers and designers group meeting where we're going to take this further and show some more tricks about labeling and map checks and deed descriptions you can write from this, and show some more gotchas with editing parcels and what you have to watch out for to be successful. Thanks.